making this service what it is this morning. If you've got your Bibles, Psalms chapter 77, verses 19 to 20, and then Exodus chapter 14. I'm going to just jump around that text. Psalms 77, 19 to 20, Exodus 14, verses 1 to 2. You know, the Red Sea story in the Bible is one of the epic, most dramatic drama in the Bible. The Red Sea stories, the Red Sea incident has been made into movies. All kinds of sermons have been preached from that drama, from that scenario. You know the Red Sea story. You know the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and heading to the Promised Land, and then they run into the Red Sea and the Egyptians behind them. You know the story. All kinds of things have been said around that drama. All kinds of movies, epic movies have been made from that drama. A lot of people will concentrate on how God split the Red Sea and you had walls of water standing on the left and on the right side of the children of Israel, and they had to cross. All kinds of things have been said around the Red Sea drama. And what we're going to do in the coming weeks is we're going to investigate the incidences around the Red Sea. We're going to show there are lessons in that drama that can help you and I deal with the dilemmas of life. Turn to your neighbor and say the dilemmas of life. We are going to unpack the Red Sea story, and I'm going to believe God that by the grace of God I could pick up 5 to 10 lessons that will help you and I deal with moments in our lives when we face a dilemma. So we are going to start a series today, a series I've called the Red Sea Protocols. Turn to your neighbor and say the Red Sea Protocols. You could call it the Red Sea Rules, but the Red Sea Protocols. And this morning we are going to look at the first protocol. I've entitled this sermon, I called it Realize That Your Situation is an Appointment, Not an Accident. I want you to read out together. Say 1, 2, ready, go. Realize that your situation is an appointment, not an accident. Let's read our text as we begin this series. Psalms chapter 77, verses 19 to 20. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Let's look at Exodus 14. Exodus 14 verse 1 to 2. Exodus 14 verse 1 to 2. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. Exodus 14, 9 to 11. Then the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamped at the sea by Pi Hahiroth, in front of Baal Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Let's pray this morning. Heavenly Father, may this series of sermons help us where we are. May you bring revelations that would encourage your church. Would you make yourself real in our lives? May the entrance of your word through this series bring hope, bring understanding. In Jesus' name, and all God's people said, realize that your situation is an appointment, not an accident. Let's begin by looking at the cul-de-sacs of life. The cul-de-sacs of life. That term, cul-de-sac, Sister Eka will probably know it. Estate agents, we know what that term means. You could say that a house is in a cul-de-sac, Because a house is in an area or in a dead end, is in an alley that is leading nowhere. Military planners would often use the term cul-de-sac. It means a road that is leading to nowhere. That word means a dead end. It means that if you follow this road, you are beyond this road, there is nothing there. It means that it's a blind alley. It's a dead end. It is a road that leads to nowhere. Every now and then, when the satellite navigation was not as efficient as it used to be, every now and then you will punch an address into your sat-nav, and then the sat-nav will take you and take you and take you, and you just be following the sat-nav until you drive into a road that is leading nowhere, and you're wondering what is going on. Well, that road that you're in that is leading nowhere is what is known as a cul-de-sac. It is a journey that has come to an apparent end, and it's leading nowhere. It feels like you have come to the end of this road and you can't see beyond the road. So estate agents will know what that means. They want to sell a house to you. They will say that house lives in a dead end. It lives in a close. In Nigeria, we'll say it's a close. But that word is the word cul-de-sac. The military planners know that word. They know when they're planning a military operation, they will say, no, we can't use this road. We can't escape through this road because this road leads to nowhere. It is a dead end. It's a blind alley. In our text, the children of Israel are in a cul-de-sac. That's what's going on in our text. The children of Israel are in a cul-de-sac. This is the proverbial finding yourself between the rock and a hard place. When you hear people say someone is between the devil and the deep blue sea, this is exactly a practical application of that. You hear every now and then somebody will say, I am between the rock and a hard place. So before me is the rock, behind me is a hard place. I am between the sea. The devil is behind me. The blue sea is in front of me. Either way I turn, people are going to die. It feels like my journey is over. It feels like I'm in trouble. I can't go further ahead. I can't go behind me. I'm in a cul-de-sac. The journey seems to be ending. That's where the children of Israel are located in our text. And the children of Israel are not the only people that life have brought to a cul-de-sac. Every now and then you and I will experience life bringing us to a cul-de-sac. You and I will experience a cul-de-sac in a relationship. You get to that point in your relationship, you think, I don't even know what I could do next. I'm at the end of the road. I've come to my wit's end. Sometimes you find a cul-de-sac in business. You've done all that you can do. You've journeyed in business, and you've come to this point where you think, I can't see ahead of me. There's no road here. Life will bring you and I every now and then to a cul-de-sac. The problem in our text is we're going to ask a question. How did they get to this cul-de-sac? Here are the children of Israel. They've gotten to a point in their journey, and here they are. They're trying to go to the promised land. They're journeying from Egypt to the promised land, and suddenly there's the sea before them. They can't swim that sea. This is not a sea that you can canoe yourself over. This is not a sea that you can boat yourself over. If you could boat yourself over the sea, if you could canoe yourself over the sea, then it's no longer a what? It's no longer a what? It's no longer a what? It's no longer a cul-de-sac. This is a situation you cannot forge ahead. And so here they are. The sea is in front of them. Behind them is Pharaoh and the chariots of Egypt. Around them, and you don't read this until you go to that map if you're a geological student. Around them are hills, dangerous hills with dangerous Middle Eastern animals. So I want you to imagine what's going on here. Here they are. Oh, we're going to the promised land. We're going to the promised land, and then they get here, and it's a sea. They turn around. It's Pharaoh, and not only Pharaoh. Miriam wrote a song. He says Pharaoh and the chariots of Egypt. So here they are. It's a sea. They can't swim it. They can't canoe across it. They can't boat themselves across it. There's no way to ford themselves across it. Then they turn back, because the natural thing is to head back to where you're coming from. And then you turn back. You can't even return to Egypt. Pharaoh is behind you. The Red Sea is in front of you. And there are hills by your side. Have you ever felt that way before? Have you ever felt that way in your life? Where you are facing the Red Sea in front of you. And where you're coming from, you can't even return from where you're coming from. Ever faced that in your marriage? You come to the end of something that I can't go beyond this. There's no road here. I can't even go back. There's no road behind me. No road in front of me. No road behind me. No road by my side. Ever felt that way in ministry? You've done all you can do. You've done everything you know how to do. And it feels like there's no road in front. It's a Red Sea. You're caught between the devil and the sea. You're caught between the rock and a hard place. Anywhere you turn, it looks like things will go wrong. In your front is a sea. Behind you is Pharaoh and his chariots. And around you are mountains. The question we must ask is, how did the children of Israel get to this point? How did they get to this point? And this is what's going to surprise you. How did they get to this point? Well, they got to a cul-de-sac by following God's instructions. It was God's instruction that brought them to a cul-de-sac. Remember, the first instruction was, tonight is Passover night. That's the first instruction. Kill a lamb and put the blood of the lamb on your doorpost. They obeyed that instruction. They killed the lamb and put the blood on their doorpost. They were told that the angel of death was going to arrive tonight and kill all the Egyptian, the firstborns. They saw that happen. And then they were told, you are going to live tonight. It's a Passover meal. You're going to eat the unleavened bread. I don't want to read the text, but you're going to eat the unleavened bread and you're going to pack your bag and prepare for a journey. They obeyed that. Then after they obeyed that, the angel of death came, killed the first son, and Moses blew a trumpet, and they began to journey. They've obeyed God step by step. And in our text, God gives them another instruction. Exodus chapter 14 verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back, encamp in front of Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon, you shall encamp facing it. So here is the funny thing about this particular cul-de-sac. They got to this cul-de-sac not because they sinned. They got to this cul-de-sac not because they did something wrong. They got to this cul-de-sac not because they made a mistake. They got to this cul-de-sac simply because they were trying to obey God. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that the call of God, the purpose of God for your life, can bring you to a cul-de-sac? That's what's going on. Just look at it. It was instruction. If you ask them, if you're one of those judgmental type, and you go to the children of Israel and ask them, look at what are you doing here? The Red Sea in front of you, Pharaoh behind you, hills around. How did you get here? It wasn't going to nightclub that got them there. It wasn't smoking weed that got them there. The answer, the honest answer they will give you, is that we got to a dead end by following the call of God. Isn't it interesting that every now and then the purpose of God for your life will bring you to a dead end? Now I want you to pause and think about this. You're very sure that this is the man you're supposed to marry, this marriage. You were very sure, you felt God in that marriage. And then suddenly, you find yourself in a marriage called the sack. You were very sure that God called you in the ministry. You know that beyond that. And in your mind, you have this romantic idea of how it's going to go. You know you're going to get to Canaan of ministry, Canaan of marriage, Canaan of business. Some people here, you know God called you to that business. God told you that build that business, and you began to do it. You followed instruction after instruction, and after instruction, and after instruction. One time you were asked to tithe, you tithed. One time you were asked to buy a bus, you bought a bus. One time you were asked to give towards a land, you gave towards a land. One time you even went and bought equipment for the church, and you followed instructions upon instruction. You've done that business, done this other business, and all you have done is followed instructions of God. And suddenly you wake up one morning and you're in a cul-de-sac. You know, it was God that told you to gain admission into that university. You knew that. You came to a sermon one day and you felt God telling you to increase your knowledge, and you took the form and you bought the form and you went into university, and suddenly one term you can't pay your school fees. And you're thinking, what's going on here? You're in a cul-de-sac. No one here is exempted from the cul-de-sac. Not even when God has called you to do that thing. I want to bring a revelation to this job, because we're going to be dealing with some things over the coming months. You know, no one is exempted to what looks like a cul-de-sac, even when God has called you to do something. So if you ask the children of Israel, hey, how did you get here? Didn't you know? Who told you? They'll tell you, now wow, we were following the instructions of God. Exodus 14 verse 1 was an instruction of God that brought them to the sea. Read out Exodus verse 1. Can we put Exodus verse 1 on the text? Let's read that together. Exodus 1 to do. Can you read that? Let's read that. 1 to ready, go. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi Harirot, between Migdol and the sea. Between where? Migdol and the sea. In front of Baal Zephon, you shall encamp facing it by the sea. So God told them to come. They were going like this. They were going like this. They were going like this. God told them to turn back and come close to the sea. Come close to the sea. This sea cannot be canoed. This sea cannot be boated across. But God says your path, the path to your destiny, will go through a sea that you cannot canoe yourself through. Your path to your destiny will go through a sea that you cannot boat yourself through. But he still tells you to go and encamp near that sea. And as if you think, when you thought it can't get any worse, you turn back and what do you see? Pharaoh's army. Yeah, maybe. God, didn't you tell me to marry that woman? Yes, I did. But I'm in a cul-de-sac. God, didn't you tell me to start that church? Yes, I did. But I'm in a cul-de-sac. God, didn't you tell me to do that business? Yes, I did. But I'm in a cul-de-sac. How does that work? Why is it that sometimes following the instructions of God will bring you to the sea? Will bring you to the sea, and you're caught between the sea and the devil. Why is it? Why is it? You know, sometimes you and I think that obeying the instructions of God would exempt us from the cul-de-sacs. You know, the psalmist is the only one who understands this. The psalmist, and that's the revelation I've come to give someone here who's thinking of quitting. I've come to give somebody a revelation this morning, somebody who's thinking about drinking sniper or tapia beer. I've come to give somebody a revelation. You're looking at the sea in front of you, and you're looking at Pharaoh behind you, and you're wondering, how did I get here? The psalmist understood this in Psalm chapter 77, verse 19 to 20. Put Psalms, can we read that together? Psalms what? 77, 19 to 20. Let's read that together. Your way. Hold on a minute. Your way was through the sea. Listen, let me tell you, if I gave you an instruction to Canaan, I say, follow here, and you get to the sea, and you call him Pastor Emmanuel, there's a sea here. And Pastor Emmanuel say, yeah. Your way, that way, goes through that sea. Your path through the what? Grave waters. And here is where it gets funny. Here's where it gets funny. Here's the revelation, people. The way leads through the sea. Okay, I get it. The path leads through great waters. I get it. Okay, God, where are you then? Yet what? This this is the scariest bit. God, where are you? I can't see his footprint. What is this? Look at the psalmist. Your way leads through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet yours. God, how do you get me to this point? And then I can't even see you. That's a dilemma. That's life's dilemma. I am facing the sea in front of me. I'm facing Pharaoh behind me. And it feels like I can't see who? I can't see God. Look at it. Yet your footprints were unseen. I want that to settle into your heart. The path, the way to destiny goes past the sea. And oftentimes, you're going to look around and you'll feel like God's not there. And that's the critical thing about what we're going to be looking at in the Red Sea drama. That is the command of God that brought them there. It is following God that brought them there. God has followed you. I've lived right. I have not pastored the church like people who pastor other churches. I've not done my business like people who run their business. I've followed you. Don't do this, I didn't do it. Don't eat this, I didn't eat this. Don't drink this, I didn't drink this. Don't mess around with me. I followed you. I followed you. Go here, I went. Do this, and I did. And then following you brought me to the sea. Then when I turned back, it's Pharaoh. You know you're in real trouble when you can't even return where you came back from. You know that? You know you're in real trouble. You know Nigerians are in trouble. We want to go back to 2015. We can't. The nation is facing a Red Sea situation. We don't know what 2023 is bringing. And everybody's wishing, can we go back to 2015? You can't. You know you're in trouble in a situation where you're thinking, can I just return? God, can I get back where you found me? No. I can't even go back. Because behind me are what? Pharaoh and his chariots. In front of me is the Red Sea. That is the dilemma of life. How do we deal with that dilemma of life? Before we look at how to deal with that dilemma of life, before we look at the first Red Sea protocol, the first Red Sea principle, the first Red Sea rules, let's look at a few people in the Bible who experienced this dilemma. Joseph, number one. God told Joseph, or Joseph had a dream that spoke of his prominence. I'm going to be prominent. I'm going to be a man of influence. Remember that dream Joseph had? And Joseph with his loud mouth would not keep his dream to himself. He began to share it to his brothers and his father and mom, and everybody got upset with him. The dream said, you are going to be a prominent person. And then, where does Joseph find himself? He's wanting to fulfill divine dreams. He was seized, stripped, sold as a slave, and imprisoned in Egypt. How did he get there? By following the will of God. Wouldn't you call that a cul-de-sac? That's a dead end. He can't even go back to Egypt. He's in prison. I can't go forward. I can't go backward. I've come to preach to someone here. You've come to church this morning, and your situation is such that you can't do what? You can't go forward, and you can't go backward. How do you deal with that? Look at Joseph. So when I'm preaching this sermon, this is not unprecedented. This is not something new. There are biographies in the Bible who have experienced the cul-de-sacs of life, and they got into that cul-de-sac by following the instructions of God. I tithed, but they burnt my shop down. Oh, how is that? I married the person and we're struggling. How is that? I planted a church and how is that? So that's Joseph. Number two person in the Bible who's found himself in a cul-de-sac is Moses. Moses was in the Pharaoh's house, so minding his own business. And the promptings of the Lord began to stir him. The promptings of the Lord began to stir him. One moment, Moses is in the wilderness of Miriam. He's sitting in the wilderness. He had tried to do the will of God. He had failed. And he's sitting in the wilderness. The prince of Egypt is in the wilderness. He can't even go back to Egypt. He can't go forward. He can't go back. You want me to give you a few more examples? What about David? What about David? Samuel comes to the house of Jesse, eliminates David's 7 children, Jesse's 7 children, and finally gets to David and pours the anointing oil on David and tells David, you are going to be the king of the children of the nation of Israel. That's what David was told. But what was going on after that anointing? Saul began to pursue him. Paul pursued him from cave to cave. And he'll be thinking, all I did was try to obey God. You said I'm going to be king of the nation of Israel. But I'm not king. I'm in a cave. I'm running from Saul. I'm running from the Philistines. Have you seen it? What about the disciples? One time Jesus told the disciples, I'll meet you on the other side. They jumped into the boat. And the next thing the boat they began to experience was they began to experience some serious chaos in the boat. What were they doing in the boat? They were trying to obey the instructions of the Lord. I'm preaching to someone here. You've tried to obey God and you've run into trouble. It is you that I wrote this sermon for. You've tried to obey God and you've run into trouble. You've tried to do the right thing and you've run into trouble. You've tried to do the correct thing and you've run into trouble. You've tried to do right and you're in a bad situation. What about Jesus himself? Go and save the world. And suddenly he finds himself on a cross. And then he's shouting, my Father, why have you forsaken me? Have you seen why the psalmist said that your way leads through the great sea? Your path leads through the sea, but your footprints are not seen. The will of God will lead you to a situation in your life where the presence of God will disappear momentarily. It's to that situation that I'm preaching to. Let me say it again. The will of God will bring you to a situation where you look around and say, hey, where is the person who sent me on this journey? And he's not there. That's what the psalmist was saying. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. Plant a church. You plant a church. You get to a point, you think, God, okay, where are you? Get married. You get married. Then you get to a point, God, okay, I'm in trouble. Where are you? Where are you? So, here is where the sermon begins to change. How do we survive situations like that? If Brother Mike Anyan enters a situation like that, what are the things he needs to know to survive situations where you are between the devil and the blue sea? What are the tools that a Christian needs to apply to survive that season where you're between the rock and a hard place? What do you need to know? The other Christians, the other believers, the other people of faith who survived it, what did they know? What are the things you need to know? Because there's a confusion here. The confusion is that, God, you asked me to do this. You brought me to this thing. I have done it to the best of my ability. I have obeyed you, and obedience to you has brought me to a call the sack. It is here that people quit. They abandon what they have been called to do. They run away. It is here that people jump into the lagoon or jump out of a 10-story building. It's here that people want to commit suicide. It's here that you're going to hear people, if you're a Job, you're going to hear your wife tell you to curse God and die. There's a confusion that you're going to deal with in this situation. So what are the things that help Christians who find themselves in this situation? Am I preaching to someone this morning? Is someone relating to what I'm saying this morning? It's for you that I've written this particular sermon. What's the creed? What is the thing that you need to understand in order to survive situations like that? I want to go to a quote that will help you, and then I can give you 3 principles that will help you in that situation. It was A.W. Tozer who said this, and I want us to read it together. Can we read this quote together? Can we read that quote together? Once you're ready to go. There are no mistakes in God's plan. To the child of God, there is no such thing as an accident. He travels an appointed way. Accidents may indeed appear to befall him, and misfortunes stalk his way, But these evils will be so in appearance only, and will seem evils only because we cannot read the script of God's hidden providence. What does that mean? Somebody's asking. Well, I'll tell you three things that it means that will help you. The first thing that quote means is that God is not surprised by your current situation or location. Hold that to your heart. If you're going to survive the cul-de-sacs of life where you are now, you must get it into your heart that God is not surprised by your current situation or location. Turn to your neighbor and say, God is not surprised by your current situation or location. I know the psalmist said that your footprints were unseen. But let that not fool you. It is you who, you're not seeing the footprint. Oh, am I talking to the right people? You're not getting, I'm trying to communicate something. The psalmist said, you brought me, you asked me to move, I moved. And I followed you and I followed you and I got here. There's the Red Sea here and the Pharaoh behind me and hills around me. And then I looked around for you and I can't find your footprint. If that footprint is unseen, it is us who don't see it. So the first thing to survive the cul-de-sacs of life, the first information you need is to understand that God is not surprised by your current situation or location. Tell somebody that God knows you are here. You got to listen, and you got to tell yourself that, because if you're looking for the evidence, right? The footprints were yet what? Unseen. If you're looking for the evidence, you're not going to see it, but you're going to tell yourself that my being here is not a surprise. That God is not surprised by my current situation or location. God knows exactly that Cornerstone will come to this particular point in our history. He knows that. God knows, let me tell you, if you're sick today, God knew from eternity that today you'll be sick. If you're struggling in that marriage today, if that business is struggling today, our problem is we think, because of what's happening around us, we're kind of shocked and we think God is also shocked. We're kind of petrified and we think God is petrified. Oh no, the first Red Sea protocol this morning to help you and I is to understand that God is not surprised by your current situation or location. Turn to your neighbor and say, God is not surprised. Now the second thing you must take home, Samson Makanch, the second thing you must take home this morning is you must realize that your situation, your current situation, is an appointment, not an accident. Oh, I'm giving you principles to navigate. And some of you, maybe you've never faced a cul-de-sac. Please write these things down. One day you will face it and you're going to pull this note out. And the first thing is that God is not surprised by your current. So we are in the, the sea is in front of us, Pharaoh is behind us. Ah! If you hear God, God will tell you, oh yes, I knew about it. Was it not me that told you to go on this road? It's not a surprise to me. You see, one of the things that will help you, and this was what helped me last week. One of the things that I got off from the floor last week when I began to run into this situation. And what helped me to get up was when I heard God tell me, "Oh, Emmanuel, I knew today will come now." So you did? Say, yeah, of course. It won't be me to tell you to go this road. I told you to go on this road. I knew this would be. I knew a time will come when you feel this way. This will happen. I knew. You do not know the power that comes when you understand that God knows where you are. God knows where you are. It was one of the things that helped Hagar. When Hagar realized that, you know what? So God sees me. You see, one of the things that messes our head up when we're in a bad situation is when it feels like God does not see. That God is not looking at us. God sees us. So the first one is that God is not surprised by your current situation or location. The second one is that you must realize that your situation is an appointment, not an accident. I just wish the power in that text, this revelation would invade your soul. God, you mean this is not an accident? He said, yeah. He said, no. He said, it's an appointment. And if you listen more carefully to the Holy Spirit, you might hear God tell you from the very foundations of the earth, I knew that you would be here in this situation at this moment. You'd be like, really? You say, yeah. Oh, so this is not, so let me tell you something. It may appear to be an accident to you, but in God's economy, it's not an accident, it's what? Next Sunday, we'll see what that appointment is for. But today, understand that that situation is not an accident. That situation is what? An appointment. And here's the third thing that'll help you and I. If he led you into it, he will lead you out of it. Let me say it again. Sister Comfort, the two comforts. If he led you into it, he will lead you out of it. Dr. Jordan, if he led you into it, he will, I want this to resonate in your head. I don't know how he's going to lead me out of it. But if he led you into it, he will lead you out of it. Mike and Yan, the same thing. The Fabayos, the same thing. If he led you into it, he will lead me out of it. And when you understand that, I'm finishing now. When you understand that God is not surprised by your current situation or location, when you understand and realize that your current situation is what? An appointment, not an accident. When you realize that if he led you into it, he will do what? He will lead you out of it. When you understand that, your confession changes. Your confession changes. And I'm going to tell you what that confession will change to. You find yourself waking up in that dilemma and telling yourself, I am here. Put that confession on the board. I am here by God's appointment, in his keeping, under his training, for his time. I'm going to repeat that again. I am here by God's appointment, in his keeping, under his training, for his time. I'll say that again. I am here by God's appointment, in his keeping, under his training, for his time. Let me make a statement. When Joseph had finally become the prime minister of Egypt, and I'm ending now, he ran into his brothers. They were vexed. They were afraid that he was going to exert vengeance on them. Joseph made a powerful statement. He told his brothers, he said, you sold me into slavery, but God sent me into Egypt. You see, the question is, was Joseph sold or was he sent? You see, 15, 18 years ago, Joseph would have said, I was sold. 15 years later, and this is a prophetic word for someone, one day you're going to turn back and look at a situation. 15 years later, Joseph turned back and he said, I thought I was sold. Only to wake up and realize that I was sent. That's all I have for you this morning. Let's give God praise.